Thank you for inviting me to talk to you today about nematodes. It's exciting for me to get to share this information with those who are interested. On my first slide, I do have your root knot nematode field symptoms that you may see in the field. On the cotton image, you will see the plants are up and down in height with stunting and some empty areas, which will fill in with weeds, unfortunately, later in the year. When you notice, we also have a cotton root that we've dug up, and you can see the tiny galls on the root as well. So those are some nice symptoms you can pick out immediately. Also on this slide, there's a J2, which is a second stage juvenile of the root knot nematode, and that's the infective stage. So you can see what they look like as well. On the next slide is the reniform nematodes, and they cause stunting in the field, across the field. Sometimes we call it the wave effect as the plants go up and down in height. And weeds will also move in there. Our number one symptom, though, on the reniform field is reduced yields with no idea, and it seems to get worse and worse every year. Now, the image of the cotton leaves at the top is called tiger striping by the growers. And often you'll see this interveinal chlorosis associated with plants that have high nematode numbers. Now, I do have a root symptom there as well. In June, in the second week of June, we can usually dig up roots, wash them gently, and you will see the nematodes with all the soil particles attached to them. So it'll be a bumpy root that you will actually see. And on this slide as well, you'll see the mature female, not the mature, but the infected female, which is the one who enters the root and causes all the damage. So with the reniform nematode, it is only the female that enters the root and causes the damage. Okay. On our next slide, the only way you'll know you have a nematode problem is to take a sample and send it in for sure, and that can confirm it. Then you'll have confirmation you have nematodes. But the numbers of the nematodes vary dramatically over the season. So as you see on the chart, I put the line across the plant growth. So when you first plant your seeds, your nematode numbers are really low, but there's been no food source all winter. So once the cotton plant starts to grow, the nematode numbers increase with that plant growth, and it's up the maximum plant, you have the maximum number of nematodes in the soil. They've got a huge food source. And once we harvest that plant, there's no food source, the nematode numbers usually drop off 70%. So if you take your samples in the spring, the numbers will be low compared to in the fall when they'll be much higher. So that makes a difference. Okay, the next slide is what we hear about is the nematode resistant varieties. So on this slide, you will see phytogen 480, phytogen 500, phytogen 580, and phytogen 360, which all are considered two-gene homozygous. So the genes are identical, and we should have no outcrossing there. So those are the ones we do have in this area. We also have the next set is phytogen 320, which is probably more of a Texas variety, and delta pine 1454, which we do have here. They're close to two-gene homozygous, but we do have some outcrossing that occurs in those two. The next set are delta pines, 1747 and 1823, which are both available. They have one gene, and they're homozygous. But that one gene is very effective, so they do have one gene in there. We also have Stoneville 5600, which is considered probably two-gene homozygous. And I did contact Terry Wheeler in Texas, and she screens all these to make sure we had the genes and all that set. So that's where I found out. More information from her too is the genes. Chromosome 11 is the main gene, which stops galling on the root, and that's the primary one. There's also one on chromosome 14, which I believe phytogen is using, but delta pine is using a different one, and we don't know which one that is. So that's what we know about the genes. Now on the next slide is the data that we did do. Corteva did give us phytogen 340, which has no resistance whatsoever, to compare to phytogen 360, which does have the two genes that are homozygous. And on this slide, you will be looking at the bar chart. The blue bars are our yields that we just got in last week, and the red dots, or the orange dots, are the nematode numbers. Phytogen 360 supported 82% less root knot than 340. That is really good. No nematicides or anything, just genotype. The yields were increased 619 pounds. Now that's seed cotton, but there's no nematicide just from the genetics of the cotton crop. We got 619 more pounds of cotton. This looks good. We're excited. The next slide, the Cotton Commission kindly gives us funding to test all possible nematicides I can get my hands on. And this is on delta pine 1646, and you will see there's a dozen different nematicides across the bottom. Overall, nematode numbers will reduce 52% by any nematicide, just averaging them all. Yields were increased 570 pounds an acre, seed cotton, but just from an average of all the nematicides. I won't worry about statistics, but the top yielding ones were the AgLogic, which is the aldicarb. There was a vellum, 6 fluid ounces in furrow spray that did really well, and then also the vellum total, 14 ounces, followed by that Vidate spray at Pinhead Square. Those were our top 3 yielding ones from this year. Okay, now moving on to reniform. The next slide, at the Tennessee Valley Research Station, we had the opportunity to inoculate a field. So we have a field that's reniform, and right next to it, we have a reniform-free field. So we put the same varieties in both fields, and I look at the yield difference. In that field, you see there's 10 bars from the last 10 years. Last year, between those varieties, we had 59% less cotton in the reniform field versus the reniform-free field. So that's what the nematode is costing. The average over 10 years is 47%. So the take-home message is if you have a clean field, plant those first, and then plant the infested fields, and then wash the equipment. So you don't get it in that reniform-free field. We can't build that back. Okay, on next slide, we have a reniform-resistant variety, and I was only able to test one, but Phytogen 3D32, and it does have the 2 root knot resistant genes that are homozygous, and it has 1 reniform resistant gene, so it's a 3-gene combination. And at Tennessee Valley, it did very well. On this slide, you have the bars for the yields and the orange dots for the nematode numbers. Our control was Phytogen 340, no resistance. Our resistance is the Phytogen 3D32 with 3 genes. Nematode numbers, 82% lower, 83%. Very good nematode reduction. But the yields were doubled. So the Phytogen 3D32 doubled the yields versus the control in the 340. So that was a 1,692 pound increase in seed cotton yield. That's amazing. We can't wait to add nematicides and see what happens. Okay, and the next slide is our nematicides, all possible nematicides in this nematode field. And as you look, we do have populations. Overall, we're only reduced 8% because 3 of them didn't reduce numbers at all. But the others looked good. The average yield increase was 331 pounds. The top 3, AgLogic, Propulse at 10 ounces in furrow spray, and again, the vellum total at 14 plus with a Vidate spray at Pinhead Square. So in Tennessee Valley, this year, those were the top yielding ones. Then we go on to the next slide is those varieties I told you about. We have the same varieties in the reniform field and the reniform-free field. And on this, we added vellum total 14 ounces in furrow spray. Notice it dropped nematode numbers 92%. So the vellum total did very well in 2018. On this next bar chart, it's a little busy, but it gives you the yields. The first 2 bars are the yields in the reniform-free field, no nematode. What is the potential that we can produce? You notice the green bars, we have 4,000 pounds of seed cotton across all of them. That was a great yield for that. We added vellum total to this field too, and we did increase yields 194 pounds. Now whether that pays for it, you guys will know. It's not as much. Now the next bar is the dark blue bar. That is the reniform yield with no nematicide, and that's the cotton yield in the reniform field. So you compare the blue to the green bars, and you see we lost 59% of our yield. When we added the nematicide vellum total, those are the orange bars, we did bring it up 890 pounds per acre. So we increased it. But this take-home message is, even with our nematicide, we have not eliminated all the stress. So we want to keep our nematode-free fields free and don't bring the nematode in. Because we can improve yields, but we can't bring them back up to what they were without the nematode. Okay, so the next slide is my standard host slide. So you've got cotton, soybeans, corn, and peanut, and all the nematodes listed. So there's always rotations that are out there if you have the equipment and can do it. And rotating always helps. So cotton is not a host for the peanut root knot. It's not a host for soybean cyst. So if you've got those, it's a great rotation. Soybean is a host for everything, but not as good as other crops. So reniform will grow to soybean, but it doesn't increase as well as it does on cotton. So that is an option. Corn is great. It hosts all the root knots, but it doesn't host reniform or soybean cyst. So that's good. Peanut hosts only the peanut root knot, not the southern root knot. And it doesn't host reniform or soybean cyst. So those are options if you have them, and they're good. The last slide we did, just so you know, and it's just the bars, but what we did was we had an area of the root knot field, back to root knot. where it was in cotton, and the first 3 bars were from the soil from cotton. The next 3 bars are the soil from where we had corn growing for 2 years, and the last 3 are where we had soybean growing for 3 years. So when we put cotton, and you'll see the blue bar is the nematode reproduction on cotton following cotton monocot. When we take that cotton soil and we plant corn, it's in yellow, and soybean is in green. Notice the populations are not half. So even though for a root knot we switch to another susceptible crop, you change that food source and the nematode numbers stay down. They don't increase to what they can be if it's monoculture. Same thing happened with corn. Notice the highest population is corn following corn following corn. Switch to cotton or soybean, populations of nematodes are half. And we saw the same thing with the soybean in the last group. The green bar is soybean following soybean following soybean. But if you move to cotton or corn, the nematodes of the numbers are half. So any rotation will help, even if it's a susceptible crop. And the last slide is a beautiful cotton crop, and I hope your all look like that this year. Thank you. I have my email address on there if you have any questions. I can send you what literature we have. Thank you very much.